I stood at the kitchen island chopping vegetables for dinner, the rhythmic sound of the knife against the cutting board filling our Vancouver penthouse. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the North Shore mountains were painted in shades of purple and gold as the sun set. I was making Richard's favorite wild salmon with roasted root vegetables and quinoa. After 32 years of marriage, I knew exactly how he liked everything prepared. The elevator dinged, and I heard his footsteps quicker than usual, almost bouncing. Richard appeared in the doorway, his salt and pepper hair slightly disheveled, his face flushed with an excitement I hadn't seen in years. At 64, he still cut an impressive figure in his tailored suit, though I noticed he'd been hitting the gym more frequently lately. "Catherine!" His voice boomed across the open-concept space. "Guess what happened today?" I set down the knife and turned to face him, wiping my hands on my apron. "What is it?" "The board meeting." He loosened his tie, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. "They've made me CEO, not just managing partner anymore, chief executive officer of Morrison & Associates. The youngest CEO in the firm's 75-year history." My heart swelled with genuine pride. "Richard, that's wonderful. Congratulations, I'm so—" "There's more." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through what looked like an email. "The compensation package is incredible. Base salary of $650,000, plus bonuses that could push it past $1 million. Can you believe it? $1 million a year, Catherine." I smiled, moving toward him to give him a hug. "You've worked so hard for this. I'm so proud of—" He stepped back slightly, holding up a hand. "Wait, there's something we need to discuss. Something important." His expression shifted, becoming more serious. "This changes things, you understand? This level of responsibility, this kind of money, it's transformative." "Of course," I said, though something in his tone made my stomach tighten slightly. "We can finally take that trip to Italy you've been talking about, maybe upgrade the cottage in Whistler. Actually, I've been thinking." He set his phone down on the marble countertop with a decisive click. "I've been thinking a lot, especially these past few months while I was being considered for CEO, about fairness, about contribution, about what's mine and what's shared." I felt my smile falter. "What do you mean? Catherine, you haven't worked in 30 years, not since Victoria was born." He said it matter-of-factly, as if he were reviewing a client's portfolio. "I've been the sole breadwinner this entire time. Every dollar that's come into this household, every investment, every asset, I earned it. Through my 70-hour weeks, my business development, my expertise. Richard, I don't understand where this is." "Let me finish." His voice was calm but firm, the same tone he used with junior associates at the firm. "Now that I'm CEO, I've realized something. It's time we restructured our financial arrangement. From now on, I pay for my life, and you figure out yours. We split everything 50-50. The mortgage, utilities, groceries, car insurance, everything. Right down the middle." The knife I'd been holding earlier might as well have been plunged into my chest. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, for him to break into a smile and say he was joking. But his face remained serious, expectant, as if he'd just proposed something perfectly reasonable. "But Richard, I haven't worked since 1994. I gave up my position at the hospital to raise Victoria, to support your career." We agreed. "That was your choice," he interrupted. "Nobody forced you to stop working. And frankly, Catherine, what exactly have you been doing all these years? Victoria's been out of the house for over a decade. She's 31 years old now, finishing her residency. The house basically cleans itself. We have Maria twice a week. You have all the time in the world, and yet you've chosen to remain unproductive." Each word landed like a slap. "Unproductive? I'm being honest here. Isn't that what you always say you want? Honesty?" He walked to the fridge and pulled out a bottle of sparkling water. "Look, I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm trying to be fair. This promotion, this salary, it's my reward for decades of hard work, my achievement, and I think it's only right that I get to enjoy the fruits of my labor without subsidizing someone else's lifestyle." "Someone else?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. "Richard, I'm your wife." "Exactly. My wife. Not my dependent. We're partners, aren't we? That's what you've always said. So let's be equal partners. You bring in your half, I'll bring in mine. Fair is fair." He unscrewed the cap on his water bottle, took a long drink, and then looked at me with an expression that might have been mistaken for concern if I didn't know better. "I've already spoken to Derek at the bank. He's going to help me set up a separate account for my income. We'll keep the joint account for shared expenses, but we each contribute equally, starting next month." Next month? I gripped the edge of the counter. "Richard, I don't have an income. I haven't worked in 3 decades. What am I supposed to do?" "You're a smart woman, Catherine. You have a nursing degree from UBC, even if it is 30 years old. I'm sure you can figure something out. Plenty of women your age are entering the workforce. There's no age limit on ambition." He checked his watch. "I have a conference call with Tokyo in 20 minutes. I'll eat at my desk." He grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl and walked toward his home office, then paused at the doorway. "Oh, and one more thing. I'm taking the master bedroom. You can move your things to the guest room. I need better sleep now that I'm CEO, and honestly, your snoring has been keeping me up. It's nothing personal." The door to his office clicked shut, leaving me standing alone in our beautiful, expensive kitchen, the salmon still waiting to be cooked, the vegetables half chopped. My entire world suddenly tilted on an axis I didn't recognize. I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, I carefully put the salmon back in the fridge, covered the vegetables, and walked to the guest room, now apparently my room. I sat on the edge of the bed that had hosted my mother during her visits, my sister when she was in town, and stared at my reflection in the mirror opposite. Who was looking back at me? A 62-year-old woman with silver-gray hair I'd stopped coloring years ago because Richard said he liked it natural. Laugh lines around my eyes from 3 decades of smiling at his jokes, supporting his career, entertaining his colleagues. I'd maintained my figure, stayed active with yoga and walking, but I saw clearly now what Richard saw. Someone past her prime, unproductive, expendable. No, I wouldn't accept that. I couldn't. I pulled out my laptop, the one I used for managing our household, organizing our social calendar, booking our vacations. I opened a new browser window and typed, "Career Counseling for Women Over 60 Vancouver." Then I stopped. Thought. Deleted it. Instead, I typed, "Divorce Lawyer Vancouver." But I didn't press enter. Not yet. Because something else was nagging at me, something I'd noticed over the past 6 months, but had dismissed: Richard's new gym schedule. The way he'd been dressing better, wearing cologne to the office, the late-night phone calls he took in his office, with the door closed, the credit card statement that showed flowers purchased every week, flowers I never received. I closed the laptop and lay back on the guest room bed, staring at the ceiling. For 32 years, I had been Mrs. Richard Morrison, Catherine Morrison, wife of the brilliant tax attorney, the woman who hosted perfect dinner parties, who remembered everyone's names and dietary restrictions, who managed every aspect of our personal life so Richard could focus on his career. The woman who gave up her nursing career right when she was being considered for nurse practitioner because Richard said Victoria needed her mother at home full-time. Victoria. I needed to talk to my daughter. I pulled out my phone and sent her a text. "Sweetheart, are you free to talk? Nothing urgent, but would love to hear your voice." 3 dots appeared immediately. "Mom, about to go into a shift, but can call you around 1 p.m. my time. That would be 8 p.m. yours. Is that okay?" I typed back, "Perfect, love you." The hours until 8 o'clock crawled by. Richard emerged from his office around 7, microwaved some leftovers, and ate them while watching the financial news in the living room. He didn't speak to me. I might as well have been invisible. At precisely 8, my phone rang. Victoria's face appeared on the screen, her dark hair pulled back in a professional bun, still wearing her white coat. "Hey, Mom. Sorry, I'm in the residence lounge. It's been crazy here, 3 back-to-back surgeries." "What's up?" I had planned to tell her everything, but looking at her exhausted face, her eyes bright with the passion she'd inherited from me, the passion for healing I couldn't burden her. "Not yet. I just wanted to hear about your day. How are you doing?" She launched into a story about a complicated case, and I listened, asked questions, laughed at the right moments. This was my daughter. my brilliant, compassionate daughter who was going to be an incredible orthopedic surgeon. I had given up my career so she could have every opportunity, every advantage, and I had never regretted it, not once. "Mom, you sure you're okay? You sound different." "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just proud of you. So incredibly proud." After we hung up, I sat in the darkening guest room and made a decision. If Richard wanted 50-50, I would give him 50-50, but on my terms. The next morning, I waited until Richard left for the office. Then I got to work. First, I called my old friend Jennifer, who'd stayed in nursing and was now director of patient care at Vancouver General Hospital. We'd kept in touch over the years, meeting for lunch every few months. "Jennifer, I know this is out of the blue, but I need your help. I'm looking to get back into nursing." There was a pause. "Catherine? After 30 years? I know. But I have my degree, my license. I've kept it current even though I haven't practiced. I've been volunteering at the hospice for the past 5 years. I need to work, Jennifer. I need it badly." Her voice softened. "What's going on? Can we meet for coffee? Today, if possible?" 2 hours later, we sat in a Starbucks on Robson Street. I told her everything. Jennifer listened without interrupting, her expression moving from surprise to anger to determination. "That absolute bastard," she said when I finished. "I'm sorry, I know he's your husband, but Catherine, this is financial abuse. You know that, right?" "I'm starting to understand that." "Okay." Jennifer pulled out her phone. "Here's what we're going to do. We have a program specifically for nurses returning to practice. It's a 6-month refresher course, paid training, and then placement. The salary isn't amazing to start about $60,000 for a part-time position while you're training, then $85,000 full-time after certification. But it's something. When can I start? Let me make some calls. Give me 24 hours. I spent the rest of that day doing something I'd never done before, investigating Richard's finances. We'd always had a joint account for household expenses, but I realized I had no idea what else existed. Richard handled all our investments, our tax planning, everything. I was completely in the dark about our true financial picture. I called our accountant, Malcolm, whom I'd known for 20 years. "Malcolm, this is Catherine Morrison. I need copies of our tax returns for the past 5 years." "Oh, hello, Catherine. Well, typically Richard handles." "Malcolm, my name is on those returns too. I have a legal right to see them, don't I?" "Well, yes, of course. I'll have my assistant email them to you this afternoon." Next, I went to the bank. Derek, the manager Richard had mentioned, wasn't there, but a young woman named Shayla helped me instead. I explained that I needed information about all accounts with my name on them. "Mrs. Morrison, you have signing authority on the joint checking account, the joint savings account, and you're listed as a secondary holder on 2 investment accounts. Would you like printouts?" "Yes. Everything, please. For the past 12 months. While I waited, I pulled out my phone and did something I'd been resisting. I called a divorce lawyer. Not to file, not yet, but to understand my options. The lawyer, Patricia Chen, had a voice that was both warm and professional. "Based on what you're telling me, Mrs. Morrison, in British Columbia, you would likely be entitled to 50% of all assets accumulated during the marriage, regardless of who earned the income. The law recognizes that homemaking and child-rearing are contributions to the marriage. You would also likely receive spousal support, given the length of the marriage and the income disparity." "What if he's hidden assets?" "Then we do what's called financial discovery. We subpoena bank records, tax returns, investment accounts. It's very difficult to hide money in a divorce in Canada, especially in BC. The courts don't look kindly on it." I thanked her and hung up just as Shayla returned with a thick stack of papers. I took them home and spread them out on the guest room bed. What I found made my hands shake. Richard had been moving money. For the past 18 months, regular transfers from our joint investment account to an account I didn't recognize. $20,000 here, $30,000 there, $50,000. Over $600,000 in total moved to an account at a different bank entirely. I picked up my phone and called Patricia Chen back. "I think I need to hire you, and I think I need a forensic accountant too. That evening, Richard came home with takeout Thai food. He'd bought enough for one person. I watched him eat in the living room while scrolling through his phone, occasionally smiling at something on the screen. "Richard," I said from the doorway, "we need to discuss the financial arrangements you mentioned. I'd like to see a full accounting of our assets so I understand what 50% of expenses would mean." He didn't even look up. "I told you, Derek is handling it. You'll get a statement next month showing what you owe." "What I owe? For living in a house I've maintained for 30 years? For living in a house I paid for. With income you earned while I raised our daughter and managed every single aspect of our personal life so you could work 70-hour weeks." He finally looked at me, his expression cold. "Catherine, you're being dramatic. You chose to be a housewife. That was your decision. Now I'm simply asking you to contribute financially. If you can't handle that, maybe you need to reconsider your living situation." "My living situation? Well, this apartment is quite large, expensive to maintain. Perhaps you'd be happier somewhere more modest. There are some nice, subsidized senior housing developments in Surrey." Surrey. A 45-minute drive from Vancouver on a good day, in the opposite direction from everything I knew, everyone I loved. "You want me to move to Surrey?" "I'm just saying, if you can't afford to live here, there are options. I'm not going to subsidize your lifestyle anymore." He turned back to his phone. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." I went back to the guest room and opened my laptop. The emails from Malcolm had arrived with the tax returns. I started reading, and what I found was startling. Richard's income had been much higher than I'd realized. For the past 5 years, he'd been earning between $400,000 and $500,000 annually, not the $250,000 I'd thought. And there were capital gains from investments I'd never heard of. I spent the next 3 weeks in stealth mode. During the day, while Richard was at work, I met with Patricia Chen and her recommended forensic accountant, David Ng. I started my nursing refresher course at the hospital. I gathered documents, took photos, backed everything up to a cloud drive Richard didn't know existed. Jennifer had come through with the nursing program, and I threw myself into it. The first few days were overwhelming, so much had changed in 30 years. Electronic health records, new medications, new protocols, but it came back faster than I'd expected. The young nurses in the program treated me with respect, even asking for my input on patient care decisions. I remembered why I'd loved this work. The instructors were impressed. "Catherine, you have incredible instincts," one of them told me after I'd successfully talked a frightened patient through a difficult procedure. "That doesn't come from textbooks. That's experience, maturity. The patients respond to you differently than they do to the younger nurses." At home, Richard and I existed in cold parallel. He'd had a lawyer draw up a formal agreement outlining his proposed financial arrangement. I was to pay $1,500 per month toward the mortgage, $800 for utilities, $600 for property taxes, $500 for building maintenance fees, and contribute equally to groceries. $3,400 per month, on an income I didn't have yet. "You have until the end of next month to make your first payment," he said, sliding the paper across the kitchen counter like a eviction notice. "After that, I'll have to consider other arrangements." I signed it without argument, which seemed to satisfy him. What Richard didn't know was that David Ng had found something interesting. Very interesting. Richard's expense reports from Morrison and Associates showed charges that didn't quite add up. Business dinners for one person costing $600. Hotel rooms in Vancouver when we lived in Vancouver. Car services to addresses that weren't business-related. And all of it approved by Richard himself, who as managing partner and now CEO, had signing authority over his own expenses. "This looks like embezzlement," David said quietly during one of our meetings. "He's been expensing personal costs as business expenses. It's fraud." "How much are we talking about?" "Over the past 2 years? Roughly $300,000, maybe more. And look at this," he pointed to a hotel charge in Victoria. "This is the same weekend you told me he said he was at a conference in Seattle." The mistress. Of course there was a mistress. Patricia Chen leaned forward. "Catherine, this changes things significantly. If we can prove fraud, If we can prove he's been embezzling from his own firm while planning to divorce you, the courts won't be sympathetic to him. Plus, the firm certainly won't be. What do I do? For now, nothing. Keep gathering evidence. Keep going to your nursing course. Let him think he's won. And when you're ready, when you have your job secured, we file for divorce and we file for discovery. Then we'll see how generous he's feeling about 50-50. I followed her advice. The nursing course ended with me passing the recertification exam with flying colors. Jennifer had a position waiting for me, a part-time role in the cardiac unit, 30 hours a week, $68,000 a year. It wasn't Richard's salary, but it was mine, money I earned, independence. On my first day back in Scrubs after 30 years, I looked at myself in the hospital bathroom mirror. The woman looking back was different from the one who'd stood in the guest room 2 months ago. Older, yes. Silver hair pulled back in a practical bun, lines around my eyes. But there was something else. Purpose, dignity, strength. I was Catherine Hughes again. Not just Mrs. Richard Morrison. Catherine Hughes, RN, who'd once been one of the best nurses at Vancouver General and who was about to show everyone, including herself, that she still was. When I came home that first night, exhausted but exhilarated, Richard barely looked up from his laptop. "How was your first day?" he asked absently. "Good," I said simply. "Good. Don't forget, your first payment is due on the 15th. I won't forget." I went to my room, changed out of my scrubs, and opened my laptop. Patricia Chen had sent me the divorce papers to review. Everything was ready. All I needed to do was sign and file. But something was bothering me. The expense reports, the hotel charges, the woman he was seeing. I wanted to know. I needed to know. I did something I'd never done before. I went through Richard's briefcase while he was in the shower. His phone was in the front pocket, and I knew his passcode. It had been Victoria's birthday for years, and he'd never changed it. I opened his messages, and there she was, Melissa. From the photos, she looked to be in her early 30s, beautiful, an associate at Morrison & Associates. Their messages went back 18 months. Intimate messages, plans to meet, complaints about having to be discreet. And then, 3 weeks ago, can't wait until everything is finalized and we can be together properly. You deserve to be with someone who appreciates your success, not someone who's lived off you for 30 years. Richard's response: "Soon. My lawyer says once I establish the separate finances and she can't pay, I can claim she abandoned the marriage financially. Then it's a clean break. I keep everything I earned. She gets nothing." I took screenshots, sent them to my own email, deleted the sent messages, put his phone back exactly where I'd found it. The next morning, I went to Patricia Chen's office before my hospital shift. "I want to file today," I told her, "and I want to send copies of the expense reports to the managing board at Morrison & Associates, anonymously." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "You're sure? Once we file, there's no going back." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "Then let's do it. But Catherine, one thing I'd recommend: we don't send the expense reports anonymously. We send them officially as part of the divorce filing, requesting full financial disclosure. That way, it's on the legal record. The firm will have to investigate. They won't have a choice." I signed the papers. Patricia filed them that afternoon. By law, Richard had to be served within 48 hours. The process server found him at his office. According to Patricia, who heard from the server, Richard's face went white when he read the first page. By the time he got to the financial discovery request listing his expense reports, his hands were shaking. He called me 16 times that afternoon. I didn't answer. I was at work, caring for a 68-year-old man recovering from triple bypass surgery. He needed me. My patients needed me. Richard could wait. When I finally came home at 8 that evening, Richard was sitting in the dark living room, a glass of scotch in his hand. "Catherine." His voice was hoarse. "We need to talk." "Do we? This is insane. You can't file for divorce without even discussing it with me. We're married. We're partners." "Partners," I repeated. "Like how we were partners when you told me to figure out my own life? When you moved me to the guest room? When you told me I was unproductive and needed to contribute my 50%? I was just trying to be fair. Fair? I turned on the lights. He looked older in the harsh illumination, smaller somehow. Richard, I know about Melissa. I know about the expense reports. I know about the money you've been hiding in separate accounts. I know everything. The color drained from his face. Catherine, listen. No. You listen. For 32 years, I listened. I supported. I sacrificed. I built my life around yours. I gave up my career, my independence, my identity, all so you could become the success you are today. And the moment you didn't need me anymore, you tried to cast me aside like I was nothing, like I contributed nothing, like those 32 years meant nothing. It's not like that. Then what is it like, Richard? Explain it to me. He couldn't. He just sat there, the scotch glass trembling in his hand. My lawyer will be in touch, I said. Don't contact me directly again unless it's through legal counsel. I went to my room, the guest room that had become mine, and closed the door. The next few weeks were a blur. The board at Morrison & Associates launched an internal investigation into Richard's expense reports. The firm hired an independent auditor. The story leaked to the legal community, and within days, everyone in Vancouver's professional circles knew that Richard Morrison, the newly minted CEO, was under investigation for fraud. Richard hired his own lawyer, a shark named Thomas Blackwell, who tried every delay tactic in the book. But David Ng's forensic accounting was airtight. The evidence was overwhelming. Then came the deposition. Richard sat across from me in Patricia's conference room, Thomas at his side, and lied. He claimed the expense reports were honest mistakes. He claimed the separate accounts were for tax purposes. He claimed Melissa was just a colleague, that their messages were taken out of context. Patricia let him talk. Then she placed a stack of documents on the table. Mr. Morrison, this is a hotel receipt from the Four Seasons in Victoria, charged to your corporate card for the weekend of September 15th to 17th. You claimed this was for a business conference. That's correct. Except there was no legal conference in Victoria that weekend. There was one in Seattle, which is where you told your wife you were going. And these are credit card statements showing you charged romantic dinners, couple spa treatments, and 2 bottles of Dom Perignon to your business account that same weekend. Richard's jaw clenched. I may have gotten my weekends confused. And this? Patricia laid down another document. This is a lease agreement for a 1-bedroom apartment in Yaletown. Monthly rent, $4,000. Leased under your name, paid from an account my forensic accountant has determined was funded by transfers from your joint marital account with Mrs. Morrison, the same account she was entitled to 50% of, under your own logic. Thomas Blackwell's expression tightened. He leaned over to whisper to Richard, who shook his head stubbornly. And finally, Patricia said, "These are text messages between you and Miss Melissa Chen, an associate at your firm, in which you explicitly discuss your plan to force your wife into a financial position where she would have no choice but to leave the marriage, allowing you to keep all marital assets, which, Mr. Morrison, is fraud. It's also financial elder abuse under BC law." The room went silent. Richard's face was gray. "My client would like to take a break," Thomas said. During the break, I sat in Patricia's office, drinking tea, my hands steady. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was just done. When we reconvened, Thomas had clearly read Richard the Riot Act. My client would like to propose a settlement. The settlement was generous. I would receive 60% of all marital assets, including the penthouse. Richard would keep 40% and would pay spousal support of $6,000 per month until I turned 65. The separate accounts he'd been hiding would be split 50-50. The Yaletown apartment and all its furnishings would go to me. I could sell it or keep it. Additionally, Richard would resign from his CEO position before the board could terminate him. The firm would conduct its own investigation, and if fraud was confirmed, Richard would face professional consequences. Patricia negotiated that as part of the settlement, I would not pursue criminal charges if Richard made full restitution to Morrison & Associates. I accepted. Not because it was perfect, but because I wanted it over. I wanted to move forward. The divorce was finalized on a gray Tuesday morning in November. I stood outside the courthouse, breathing in the cold Vancouver air, and felt lighter than I had in years. Victoria flew in from Toronto that weekend. I met her at the airport, and when she saw me in my nursing scrubs, I'd come straight from a shift, her eyes filled with tears. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she said, hugging me tightly. "Dad called me, told me his version of everything. But I knew. I've known for months that something was wrong. You seem like you again." We went for dinner at a small Italian restaurant in Kitsilano, and I told her everything. Not to make her choose sides, but because she deserved the truth. "I feel like I should have known," she said, her voice tight with anger. "I should have seen what he was doing to you. Sweetheart, you were building your own life. That's exactly what you were supposed to be doing. And anyway, I didn't see it either. Or maybe I didn't want to see it. What are you going to do now?" "I'm going to keep working. I love it, Victoria. I forgot how much I loved nursing. How good it feels to help people, to use my skills, to be valued for what I can do, not just for what I can provide to someone else. And the apartment? I'm selling it. Too many memories. I found a beautiful 2-bedroom condo in Kitsilano, near the beach. There's a guest room for when you visit. Mom, you don't have to sell. That apartment is worth, I know what it's worth. But I don't need that much space, and I don't need the reminder every day of what I lost. Or rather, what I thought I'd lost. Because here's what I've realized, Victoria. I didn't lose anything. I got myself back. 6 months later, I was settled into my new place. I'd increased my hours at the hospital to full-time, and Jennifer had promoted me to a senior nursing role. At 63, I was the oldest new hire in the cardiac unit, but I was also one of the most effective. Patients asked for me by name. I'd sold the Yaletown apartment Richard had leased for himself, using the proceeds to fund a scholarship at UBC's nursing school for mature students returning to the profession. It was called the Catherine Hughes Nursing Excellence Award. When I signed the papers establishing it, I cried for the first time since the divorce. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Richard and Melissa's relationship had ended shortly after he resigned from Morrison and Associates. Apparently, she'd been less interested in Richard, the disgraced former CEO, than Richard, the powerful senior partner. He'd taken a position at a smaller firm in Calgary, starting over at a significantly reduced salary. I didn't feel sorry for him, but I didn't feel vengeful either. I just felt free. One Tuesday evening, after a particularly long shift, I was walking along Kitsilano Beach. The sun was setting over the water, painting everything in shades of pink and gold. An older couple, they looked to be in their 70s, walked past me, hand in hand, laughing about something. I thought about what I'd learned over these past months, about how easy it is to lose yourself in someone else's ambitions, someone else's life, about how financial control is just another form of abuse, wrapped in the language of fairness and partnership, about how society still undervalues the work of raising children, maintaining a home, supporting a spouse's career. But I'd also learned something more important. It's never too late. Never too late to reclaim your life, to rediscover your purpose, to stand up for your worth. At 63, I wasn't finished. I was just beginning again. I pulled out my phone and texted Victoria. "Just finished a great shift. Patient told me I saved his life today. Maybe a little dramatic, but I'll take it. Thinking of you. Love you, sweetheart." Her response came immediately. "That's because you're amazing, Mom. Love you too. So proud of you." I stood there on the beach, the cool evening air on my face, and smiled. For 32 years, I'd been Richard Morrison's wife. I'd been Victoria's mother. I'd been the woman who organized the perfect dinner parties, who knew everyone's favorite foods, who made everyone else's life run smoothly. Now I was just Catherine Hughes, RN. A woman who'd survived betrayal, rebuilt her life, and discovered that her value had never been tied to someone else's success. It had always been there, inside her, waiting to be recognized. And if there's anything I want others to know, especially women who might see themselves in my story, it's this. Your contributions have value, whether or not they come with a paycheck. Your years of sacrifice and support are not worthless simply because you didn't earn a salary. And if someone tries to tell you otherwise, if someone tries to use money as a weapon to control or diminish you, remember, you are worth more than any dollar amount. You always have been. Financial independence isn't about not trusting your partner. It's about respecting yourself enough to ensure you're never trapped, never powerless, never forced to accept less than you deserve. Keep your skills current. Keep your connections alive. Keep your identity separate from anyone else's, no matter how much you love them. Because at the end of the day, the only person you can truly depend on is yourself. And that's not sad. That's liberating. I walked back to my condo as the last light faded from the sky, ready for whatever came next. For the first time in 30 years, the future was mine to write, and I intended to make it a good one.